Minister, dear Ambassador, and dear all. Good morning to you all. Good morning, and welcome to the Nordic Smart City Summit. Cities all over the world have the same fundamental challenges. We need to perform our tasks in more affordable and climate-friendly way. The smart city way of working can help us solving that. It's about improving public services, making optimal use of shared resources, increasing the efficiency and reducing climate and environmental problems in the city. It's positive that involvement, sharing, and networking seems to be universal values for smart city processes all over the world. When you share a vision, it's easier to collaborate in networks. So, participation in networks is of great value. The main focus is to learn from each other through joint living lab projects and knowledge about other members' results, if they succeed or if they not succeed. In this way, we can copy good solutions and avoid the bad ones. So, I just want to say, good luck with the summit. I'm sure we have some interesting hours together this morning. Thank you.
Yes, so welcome again to this session. This is the first of 3 sessions today. I am Line Holst Jensen. I'm the facilitator of the day today. I don't know much about smart cities, but I was facilitating the first meeting in the Nordic network of smart cities 2 years ago. And now I will take you through this process where we have a lot of presentations, brief presentations. So my role is also to give you the word once in a while and make sure that you can speak with your fellow participants at the table, as well as ask questions in the app. I'll get back to that. So the objective of the summit is to strengthen the Nordic brand within smart cities, within sustainable urban development. The outputs, the takeaways for you would be to bring home some good cases, some best practice that will be mainly in the second session, and also to make new connections in between yourself, between the public sector, and the private sector, and build networks between that in order to make some possibilities for export and global investments on a longer-term basis. The 3 sessions today. First, we will have the high-level speakers. There will be very brief, short presentations. On the way, you can ask questions. I'll get back to that. And it will be on the smart city aspects and how the Nordic countries can collaborate. After that, the session 2 will be the Nordic collaboration cases. That will be 4 cities presenting 3 projects. And this will be focusing on how to scale up and export these solutions. The third session will be a more intimate setting, working with a future Nordic collaboration on health projects. So now I would like you to speak with each other at the table. Make a quick round at the table, 1 minute per person. Your name, your organization, and what, in your opinion, are the Nordic strength positions? Okay. So now I hope you have a sense of your fellow participants. Before we move on, you have the opportunity during all of the sessions, or the two first sessions at least, to ask questions using your app. Have you all installed the app of the Nordic Edge? Otherwise, it's possible to do it now. And when you open the app, you go to the lowest button saying Interaction, I think it's called, and there you press that one, and there you can ask questions, write them as you like. So the question has to be relevant for all Nordic countries, and those questions that are not relevant for that will be not prioritized by our little committee down here, or where are you? There. So as your questions come in, Tine will prioritize the questions for the following Q&A sessions, where we'll have all the speakers up here at a panel Q&A for about 20 minutes or so. Yeah, and just about 5 minutes before the Q&A, we will stop for incoming questions so that we have time for prioritizing them. That's one way. That's the digital way of posing questions. Another way is to fold a paper flyer, if you remember how to do that. Otherwise, I just practiced a bit just to show you that it is possible and that it can actually fly. So if you want to pose a question like that, don't do it all the time so that I get them in the eyes. But when I ask you, now that there's time, you can fly them in, and try to see if you can make it to the blue plateau here. Then we will collect them, and they will be taken into consideration as well, together with the questions at the app. So that is also a way to make it a bit more lively. So now we will start on this high-level speakers session, and I would like to introduce Nikolaj Astrup, the Norwegian Minister for Digitization. Nikolaj, welcome. Yes. Great. So you have 8 minutes, and you have a final countdown here.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, and I will get back to you if I can see that you were getting close.
Thank you. It's always good to be in Stavanger, Norway's smartest city. Not bad. Officially named so by my ministry, so it has to be true. Now, it's also good to have surprises, I think, when you're on stage, and I was told I had 15 minutes, now I have 7 minutes and 45 seconds. Fortunately, I don't have a script, so it's possible to do it in 7 minutes and 39 seconds. Let me just start by saying that just as we're meeting here, there's another meeting going on across the Atlantic. The UN General Assembly is meeting, the high-level meeting. You've all heard about it and read about it. And they're talking about how we're going to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. It's going to be difficult. I believe, though, that new technology and digitalization is going to be key to achieve that. And we have many examples of how new technology really can help us in achieving those goals. When I was there last year at the same meeting in New York, I was introduced to a concept called the Famine Action Mechanism. It's all about how you can use big data to prevent famine disasters. It's a very good example of how new technology can really help us solve big challenges in today's society. We have other examples, such as the Norwegian Red Cross and Microsoft teaming up to make predictive analytics to make it possible to predict how epidemics will spread. You have Telenor, the Norwegian telco company, working with the Pakistani government to establish how dengue fever spreads based on mobile phone data. So many good examples. Now, the UN has estimated that solving the SDGs or reaching the SDGs will unleash a market of $12 trillion. Huge market. Smart cities is definitely a big part of that. I believe that the Nordic countries has a lot to contribute to developing smart cities across the world. And the smart city network that we see here, I think, is a very good starting point, because no innovation happens in isolation. We need to cooperate, collaborate, and co-create to make it happen. So what is my job? My job, as Minister of Digitalization is to make sure that Norway can reap the full benefits of the digital transformation that we are experiencing right now, both for people in their everyday lives, for businesses, and for the public sector. We have a very good starting point, and we had a question up here earlier on, which is what can the Nordics, or what is sort of the strength of the Nordic countries? I believe there is one common denominator: trust. If we are to succeed with digitalization, we need people to trust our digital systems. We need trust between citizens and governments, trust between the private sector and the public sector. And we have that trust today, and that's one of the reasons why we have such a good starting point in Norway. My ambition is that we move from sort of the gradual improvement that we have been experiencing, where we make use of new technology to make public services a little bit better, to create a little bit more value in the business sector. Move from that to radical innovation, solving our challenges, making use of the opportunities in completely new and better ways, because we now have the technology that makes it possible. So radical innovation, that's what we need. I just launched a new strategy for digitalization of the public sector. The important thing about that strategy is not that I launched it, it's that I launched it together with the municipal association. So we need to work across government levels to create user-centric, seamless digital services. People don't care if it's the municipality or the state that delivers a service. They only care that it holds good quality and that it's available when you need it. We need to make that happen, and technology can help us. In order to do that, we need to tap into the innovation, the technology, the skills, and the capital in the private sector. So in the public sector in Norway, we spend 500 billion Norwegian crowns every year. How we spend it will determine what kind of public sector we get, what kind of private sector we get. So one of the initiatives in this strategy is to actually create a new program for collaboration between startups and the public sector, to make sure that we can tap into those who actually see things from outside the box. And I think that's going to be an important initiative. Another important thing that we're working on now is artificial intelligence. When we are in the making of a new strategy, we will have it ready by the end of the year. I said this is the one Christmas wish I have. It's a small memory stick with an artificial intelligence strategy under my Christmas tree. We will see, but I think I will get it. And when it comes to AI, many people say that China and the US is racing ahead and Europe is stuck in the middle. I don't believe that's the case. When it comes to industrial applications and e-government applications and smart city applications, I think that the Nordic countries in particular, and I include the Baltic countries and the Nordic countries here, have an advantage. We are already advanced in these areas. We need to make use of our strengths and build on them by using AI to create new applications that can create value, better lives, and more efficient public services. Because many of the US and China advancements in this area are based on a business-to-consumer perspective. Now, in the industrial sector, we are already among the most advanced in the world, and we need to make use of that. Data is going to be crucial. So making public data available, that's been a Nordic approach to this. In Norway, we have geo-data that we've made available, transport data we're making available. The city of Stavanger is making a lot of data available so that we can innovate on top of that, and making sure that it's not only a public responsibility to innovate on top of that, but actually letting people in and doing the job together. So data is going to be crucial. We have a lot of industrial data, health data, and public data that together will be a good basis for artificial intelligence and smarter cities going forward. I also think that the Nordic countries and Europe has an advantage when it comes to our human-centric approach. So we need an ethical framework for the use of AI and new technology. We have that in Europe, and it's going to be sought after in the rest of the world. But we also need a cautious approach. So in Norway, for instance, we have regulatory sandboxes for autonomous vehicles. We even allocated a fjord to test out autonomous ships. We're setting up a new regulatory sandbox for fintech. When it comes to digitalization, it's really not about technology for me. It's about three things. It's about culture, it's about leadership, and it's about competence. So we need a culture for innovation. We need to allow ourselves to think outside the box, to try new things. And in the public sector, this is really difficult because we are held accountable for how we spend taxpayer money. But we need to lower that bar when it comes to how we think around these things and allow ourselves to challenge existing ways of doing things. And we need leaders that back that approach, that allow those who are working in your organization, be it a big corporation or a big municipality, to actually flourish and think outside the box. And we need competence to be able to put these new technologies or implement them as we go along. And that's going to be important. The Nordic-Baltic cooperation is great. We are trying to create one digital coherent region in the Nordic countries. Already, you can be an Estonian student and you can use your Estonian EID and apply through the Norwegian student web application portal, and your EID will be definitely can be used. So we're trying now to share data and create one coherent digital region in the Nordic countries. I'm going to end there because my time is up. But I just want to say that at the end that digitalization is not an end in itself. It's an enabler for change. It's a means to an end. And the end, of course, is better lives, more sustainable societies. And by working together, I think we can achieve smarter cities, smarter countries, but also a smarter world. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikolai, for a very lively and very great way to start as well. So now I would like to introduce Jarl Friis Madsen, Jarl Friis Madsen, Danish ambassador to Norway. Welcome. And Jarl will talk about Nordic collaborations and their possibilities and impacts.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. In 15 years, we will not talk about smart cities anymore, because at that point, all cities will be smart. So it doesn't make sense to characterize them that way. But maybe when we look back in 15 years from now to the cities of 2019, we will think that they were in fact a little bit dumb, with congestion, with danger, with a lot of inefficiencies in the way that we move around, time wasted in traffic, time wasted on being analog instead of being digital. So we are going to see tremendous changes in the coming 15 years in terms of smart cities. I put up here why Nordic countries could be smart city frontrunners, and I of course mean globally. And then you might say, but are we not already frontrunners when it comes to smart cities? And the answer is yes, we are. But it's not enough to be ahead 1-0 in the halftime. Just ask Ole Solskjaer about that. You need to win the game. And I think that there's a lot of competition. There are a lot of countries, there are a lot of cities that have this ambition to be leading in this field. And to be leading is important because it's related to one of the topics that has been put up for this workshop, namely to attract foreign investments. And I will get back to that in a second. If you were to characterize smart cities and only use 2 words, maybe 3, it would be that they are sustainable and that they are data-driven. And of course, the Nordic countries have a competitive edge when it comes to these 2 areas. In fact, we have a Nordic edge. And if we start with the sustainability, I think that that's also the understanding that we have of ourselves. Oslo is the green capital of Europe this year, 2019. And my government has decided that we will reduce CO2 emissions by 70% by 2030. The EU as such, just 40% at this point. So we have a competitive edge. And when we look at the digitization, Then the European Commission makes this survey called the Digital and Society Index. And year after year, we see the Nordic countries being at the very top of this index. They're always in the so-called top 4 that they are working with. But they also compare to 17 leading nations around the world, to South Korea, Canada, the US, etc. In 2017, Denmark was number 1. South Korea was actually number 2. But if you add another country which is not a EU country, but is a EEA country, namely Norway, then Norway is also in the survey, and Norway is performing, of course, just as well, if not sometimes better, as you can see here, when it comes to use of internet services than any other. So this is the first point. The countries have a clear edge when it comes to this point. In terms of public sector, both the OECD, the UN, and the EU has named Denmark the leading country in public sector digitization. For Denmark, it is our digital ID that we can, as citizens, access everything. All communication with the public sector is done with our digital ID. And we also have another driver for this, because we have the Nordic Council, the Nordic Corporation, and here the vision is to be the most sustainable and integrated region in the world. And so the Nordic Council is working with this in order to make sure that we, as a region, can work across the region. Copenhagen was in 2014 named the global smart city of the world. And in 2017, a Norwegian company rated 5,000 cities around the world, number of perimeters, and again, Copenhagen came out on top as the most livable smart city in the world. The city of Copenhagen works with the so-called Copenhagen Solutions Lab, taking in all kinds of future technologies and trying to test them, because as you know, with a lot of technology, it is not always adopted. Think of Google Glasses or the Segway, not so popular. In comes the electric scooter, and everybody loves it. So we need to work with solutions that in fact work. Some of them don't work. And this is what is being tested out in the Copenhagen Solutions Lab. One of these is a street lab, and I think that some of these will be dealt with in the next workshop where the Copenhagen city will go through these. We also have open data. It's already been talked about by the Minister of Digitization and by the Mayor. It is very important that we all have access to data, so the municipalities of Denmark have opened up to share data and to share it with everyone in order for companies to make solutions. The Nordic Smart City Network was actually born here at Nordic Edge 2 years ago. It is a cooperation between 5 countries, 5 capitals, and 14 cities in global. And the idea, very short, because I was also cut down from 14 minutes to 7, the idea, very briefly, is that each city tests out a concept, and then you learn from this concept, and then you share these knowledges. And sometimes the learnings will be positive, sometimes it will be, we're not going to continue this project. So a very, very interesting cooperation about Nordic smart cities. If we look at attracting foreign direct investment, something that I have worked with for many, many years, companies are looking for nice test sites, and often the Nordics will be a great place to test new solutions, because our populations like to use technologies, because we are very digital, and also because of the size of the cities. So that's why companies come to, for example, Copenhagen to test. And then that will create a cluster. I believe we already have a cluster in Copenhagen with about 150 companies working with smart city solutions, and that again has a positive effect. So in rounding up, I will say that Nordic cities have definitely an edge at this point. We are green, we are digital, and we have the opportunity to learn from each other. We have the Nordic Council as a driver for further integration of the region, and we have investments coming in. And all this means that I am very optimistic about Nordic cities actually continuing to be the global frontrunners. I hope you will continue the dialogue with me or with the embassy in Oslo. You can find us up here on social media. Thank you very much, and I wish you a continued good conference.
Thank you very much to Jarl. Now you have the option of trying one of your paper flyers that you prepared already with a question. Could also be for the former speaker. Meanwhile, I will welcome Dora Bjørt. I've been training to pronounce your name. Gudjonsdottir. Dora is a city councillor and the chairperson of Human Rights, Innovations and Democracy. And Dora will talk about democracy and innovative approaches. Welcome.
Thanks. 10 minutes. Perfect. Dear friends, I have a script different from the two men that were here before me, because we all know that Icelanders are always very well prepared and quite ironic. I must first give credit to the organizers of this panel. We have enough women to be non-discriminatory and skip the hashtag all male panel, which is great. But at the same time, we have few enough to not get bored out of our minds while listening to this panel, because we all know that women know nothing about technology nor politics. So thank you for that. I'm expecting a great day with you. It's so lovely to be with you here in Norway, my second home. I was here for years. I was studying and working. And for some strange reason, I moved back to Iceland a few years ago. And I would define that act or that move as ren galskap. Because I truly miss janteloven, I miss grilling in parken, and to be absolutely drita, of course. So it's really lovely to be back. Det är hyggligt att vara tillbaka. But because of this silly act of moving back, I was simply forced to become politically active and try to do the only right thing. Make Iceland Norway again. So that's my mantra in politics, and here you have it. This brings me to learning from each other and collaborating, which is really important, and the reason we are here today. As you all know, good ideas are mostly stolen. My stay in Norway is irritating the hell out of my colleagues, because I'm always referring to how they do things in Norway, and that has become a huge joke. What we're essentially doing in our collaboration in Nordic Smart City Network is giving, receiving, and to an extent, stealing from each other. That's a nice thing. It's in a dialogue that most advancement is made, like my colleagues earlier have mentioned. The partnership between Nordic cities and municipalities is ideal, as our societies are based on shared values, trust and collaboration, including a similar social setup of welfare states and a strong call for democracy and human rights, values we love. Although being similar in many ways, there are still differences. And in a conversation on data ethics, we need to remember that ethics is created in a context. It's created in a context, and it differs through time and place. In Iceland, we have been quite relaxed when it comes to data privacy and the use of our data. I guess that's because of our very small society, so people simply trust that their data is not being exploited.
But with GDPR, people are starting to understand the importance of data protection and starting to care more. But also because of the GDPR, it's causing a huge wave of change in Iceland. We're having to jump quickly through steps that you here were through many years ago. So there's a lot happening. A core value regarding data ethics is to me consent. And when is it real? For that you need transparency. People need to know what they are accepting when they accept the terms of use, which is most often not the case. That's a huge problem. So far, the Nordic Smart Cities Network consists of 20 Nordic cities with a common goal to build a meaningful and honest partnership for the well-being of our citizens, because of course this is all about them. The Nordic cities can benefit from a closer collaboration by sharing experiences and together provide a critical mass in scaling up local projects. By learning from each other, we save time, find new, smart and good solutions and clever ways to more effectively utilize resources. With technology, we've gotten to a certain extent less transparency when it comes to our data. But we have also gotten more transparency, luckily, about decision-making and better access to information. Transparency and access to information has enabled citizens to have enough information to be very well enlightened when it comes to policy decisions. So we don't need strong politicians. We need to be strong together. It's our job in politics, in my view, to create ways for the citizens to become more empowered. Last year, the city of Reykjavik, together with the University of Iceland and more partners, launched the first social accelerator in Iceland, Startup Social, as well as the first city hackathon and climate hackathon with Climate Kick, in order to facilitate new innovative ways of thinking in the city context. The goal is to build bridges between silos that consist of, for example, entrepreneurs, students, researchers, and organizations, and the city. At the same time, we're focusing more and more on participatory democracy, which is our, these are the projects I mentioned, Borgarhakkið and Snjallræði. Try it in Icelandic, it's really easy. This is our participatory democracy project. It's our core strength. We rely on direct contact and consultation with our residents on issues that affect their daily lives. Technology, innovation, and smart solutions are really the means to an end of that journey. But it's also about how we do our work and practice decision-making. We need to be willing to give away some power. So far, our participatory budgeting project, My District, has been a success, with participating growing from year to year, being 12.3% last year. But since we're here to share some challenges as well as our success, I would like to mention that we are working on bringing the relations more offline and strengthening the consultation process between the citizens and the city administration. It's through this process that there is a lot of potential for increasing the value of the project. It's not enough to develop practical technical solutions. We need to go further than that to include the citizen in every step of the way. We need a conversation. A good offline relationship requires a good online relationship, and a good online relationship requires an offline relationship. So we're working on that. If you can help us, please do so. So we, the politicians, don't know everything. Far from that. We should be tools for empowering others and lift their good ideas and enable people developing and scaling up their own ideas. Let's spread opportunities, and with that, spread the power. Innovation joined with democratic approaches can create great things. The society evolves and we all grow together. A fresh new idea can give you a brand new perspective. Thank you.
So, any brave paper flyers? Questions to Dora? No? Is it too far? One? Work? Oh, this one. Great. Well done. Thank you, Dora, very much. So now I would like to introduce tour guide Andrew Waterhouse, Director Internet and New Media at IKT Norway. Tour guide will talk about the challenge to challenge the concept of collaboration. Welcome.
Thank you.
And these are your minutes.
Yes, thanks. Okay then, thanks for the opportunity to be here. Thanks for listening. These are very important topics. I'm going to talk about data and availability, ethics, and CIA, which you always must remember because they remember you, but confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And we also have to keep in mind that when we're talking about these things, we tend to dive into the hypes and not see the humans, not see the real value, because we get distorted by the hype. And one of the things then I want to remind you of is one of the previous speakers said, in a couple of years we'll stop talking about smart cities and go back to talking about cities. And he said, because all cities will be smart. I'm not sure I agree, all cities will be smart, but I agree we'll stop talking about smart. In the same way, we have stopped talking about electric lights. So, we're talking about data, data being the basis for everything we're going to do here, the value we're going to build. And the question is, who's in control of it? Does it matter if it's the public sector? Does it matter if it's the private sector? Does it matter if it's an individual? Does it matter who's in control of data and what are the consequences of someone being in control? And how do we handle that in the context of wanting everything to be anonymous? Wanting everything to have privacy first, etc. And one of the things I think is a good idea to do is go back to the hearing in the Senate in the US after the Cambridge Analytica scandal. That was sort of a very, very long, disturbing night. An endless row of old men asking questions that they didn't understand, putting them forward to a young man in head of a big company, and he kept giving answers after answers after answers. But the interesting thing about it was, in the beginning of the hearing, he said, we've been building tools, as if it's that and nothing else. Throughout the hearing, he came to the point that it's not enough to build the tools, and towards the end, he said, we need to take responsibility. And the question is, what is to take responsibility? One of my fears is a lot of the time it's hyped up bullshit like this headline. Blockchain-based AI voice assistant brings data privacy to smart homes. Which of course means absolutely nothing and is lacking one of the most important hype words of the last year, because this was of 2018. The word sustainability isn't in there. And we need to get beyond these words and look at what does it really, really mean? What are we trying to achieve doing this? And also we have to get beyond the political talk. Like the previous speaker from Iceland said, we need to be strong together. This is a typical politician's document. It's now from, what was it now? It's 12 years old now, from the government stating that the technology development will continue at a disruptive pace for at least another 10 years. And if that's our mindset, then we'll never succeed, actually. And we need to understand that these guys are failing. For you guys who can't read Norwegian, what it's saying here is that innovation I don't know of, but people are traveling from A to B. This is the old taxi industry in Oslo trying to defend their business models at a meeting in the city council. And you can see how the life has just disappeared from their faces. They're gray, empty eyes. There's no will to live. And then the guy in the middle sees hope. He sees something, he thinks, and he says, how much innovation do you need when people are traveling from one place to another? And look how proud they feel suddenly. Things can stay the way they've always been. But if we're on that approach, we will not succeed. So the question is, do we believe the hypes? Or can we see past them? Do we understand the technology? And more importantly, the consequences of technology. Do we really understand what it means? And even more important than that, do we understand people? Do we really understand people and the consequences of for people when getting exposed to technology and what we can use it for? I'm going to take a slight detour from people to sea cows. This is a sea cow. They're most likely friendly, at least he looks friendly, and they're about to become extinct. And people are using data to try and figure out how they can help them. Data like this. As you can all see, it's quite easy to count the sea cow in this picture, in this sea of data. For us humans, it's impossible. But for an AI system with access to the data, the imagery, it's quite easy to spot the sea cow there, inside the red circle. And this is what we need to do. We need to be able to understand what's in the data. How can we use it for the good we're trying to do? And how can we understand how we get around the obstacles? Skien is a city in Norway. They're trying to be smart. They have a project where they want to count and monitor how people move throughout the city center by utilizing network connections and learning how people use the city center so they can make the city a better city for people. But they're colliding with the data protection officer and the idea that using data is in itself a privacy violation. So one of the most important things we need to do is stand up towards the idea that we cannot use data if people are connected to the data, and figure out how do we solve this problem. Because the data being about a person isn't an argument against using it, it's a task. It's a task we need to solve to figure out how we can find a way to keep using the data and learn from the data at the same time as protecting privacy. But when learning from data, we need to understand the data. In the Second World War, the US Air Force realized they had to increase the amount of armor on their planes because planes got shot down all the time. And they started looking into data because they realized that too much armor is a bad thing and so is too little. So they had to figure out where do we need to have armor on the planes for them to succeed. So they collaborated and they aggregated up the data and realized that this is where we need data on the planes because this is where they get shot. But there's one problem with this image. There's one problem with this approach, and that is that the US Air Force was suffering from what we call survivorship bias. They were looking at the bullet holes on the planes that actually returned, not the planes that got shot down. There might be an overlap, and there might not. But we have to understand what the data is actually about, what it's actually telling us, which means we have to get beyond bias. We have to understand bias, understand the consequences of bias. And personally, I find it quite interesting and fun that if we flip the middle letters in bias, you get AI. And those two themes, those two topics, those two mindsets, approaches, call it what you want, are very interconnected. And the only way to succeed, or one of the important ways to succeed with AI, is understanding the bias in data, and for that matter, in people. This is a spreadsheet or an image of the Japanese cucumber quality system. It's quite complex, and it's very strictly enforced. You must not mix cucumbers within the quality sectors. So it's important to understand how you can achieve that. And AI is being used to sort cucumbers automatically based on photo recognition. That is not a problem because we haven't got a thing called cucumbery. Cucumbers have no rights to their data like people have. And in Sweden now, there's been quite a row about a school using facial recognition to follow pupils around in the school building, etc. The idea behind the thing is good. The implementation and the way of handling it was not good. And again, the question isn't, should we avoid using data because it's ethically hard? No, we should ask ourselves, is it ethically sound to not use the data? And then figure out a way of doing it without invading on people's privacy. But we also need to understand that when we use data to construct something like this person, because this person does not exist, this is an AI-generated person, we need to make sure we understand what we're building, what we're constructing, when we're using this great big sea of data. Can we rely on it? Is it a fair representation? And is it safe, etc.? And it's not without reason that one of the debates going on now is, how do we stop so-called killer robots? Where in the data handling process do we need to make sure we have human interaction, human quality control, and human responsibility? Which brings us to security, which is a huge issue when it comes to data. Way back in the day, security was all about this: concrete, the thickness of walls in buildings. Today it's all about digital data and how we can make sure that our systems are not tampered with, like this coffee machine. And the reason this coffee machine has been tampered with is because people find it interesting, possible, fun, whatever. And if you are so inclined, you can tamper with any coffee machine you want in this building. I would not suggest it, of course. I've never done stuff like that myself, of course. But if you were to try to do it, what you would do was go online, because you've been reading on the coffee machine on the back or on the side, and finding the model number of this machine. And then you could write that into a search engine window, say, for instance, like Google, and you can add the magic word PDF to your search query, and then you would find stuff like this. A user manual where it tells you that if you just press on the logo on the upper left corner of the screen for 3 seconds, a prompt appears and you can type in one of these 4 different passwords and have access to the machine. Say, for instance, as an engineer, and do whatever you want with it. And how much equipment have we guys got stashed around, secured in this way? What we need to do is understand how this is possible and the consequences of it, because this is not another reason to not have coffee machines. This is a reason to secure them, and that's that. When approaching stuff like that, we need to make sure we actually give people advice and regulation that has a value. I'm pretty sure all you guys have seen signs like this along the roadside. But have you ever considered how it helps you? Does this sign prevent rocks from falling? Does it give you a magic shield so you're safe while driving through the area? Or does it simply just give you the information to understand what's hitting you on the head if that happens? We need to make sure we avoid the falling rocks approach. We need to make sure we're having the right conversations. We need to make sure we understand the consequences of the technology shifts. Then and only then we'll be able to actually succeed and stand upright and use the word smart with pride, in collaboration with the word data and city, etc. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Torgeir. Now we are ready for the Q&A session. We just collected the 2 paper flyers. So I would like to invite you all up, the high-level speakers. Take a stand here, please. And we will have the questions. We have, yeah. Do I get the questions on this one too? Okay. So, the questions have been rated as well, voted for. So the most important question is, how do you see the Nordics being able to compete in a global world? What are our strengths? As we would like to get through several of the questions, please keep your answers a bit brief, and to make time for more questions and also more speakers. Who would like to start?
Yeah, I can start. I think I touched upon this a little bit in my presentation. I think that we have a very strong competitive edge. We have people adopting technology very easily in the Nordic countries. We have the ambitions to come there. So I think that the Nordic cities and the Nordic countries have a very strong opportunity. But we need to move on because today our cities are not smart. So we need a continuous exchanging, as we also do, learning from each other and exchanging these experiences, good and bad.
Yeah. Anyone who would like to add? Yes?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that that we need to sort of keep in mind how and why our societies have become what they are. The models of sharing, the models of inclusion, and also at the same time combine what you said about adopting technology with our technology tradition, because we have a long and proud tradition of technologies. Everything mobile basically comes from the Nordics. We just lost a bit of touch with it, so we just need to get back into that. But we have the technology, we have the knowledge, we have the experience, and we have the open societies with a high enough trust level. Then we need to combine these things and just remember why we're doing it, and not get preoccupied or stopped by the fact that something might collide with a strategy or a way of doing things or a tradition or how we divide responsibility for something between the different levels of government way back in the day.
Yeah.
I believe the Nordic model, so to speak, of how we organize our societies, our traditions for collaboration and cooperation across public and private sector is an important strength. Trust has been mentioned as an important strength, and also the fact that we have very tech-savvy, both citizens but also industries. And we have proven time and time again that we are able to change our ways and adopt new technologies and adapt our ways of working. And I think that is something that we have in common in the Nordic countries. So it's actually about people, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just want to add to that I think what we really have is also that we are quite small. We're not so many, so we have this trust, like it has been mentioned here, but also that, you know, small communities function well as test labs for new ideas. So they spread quickly if they function, if not, they don't. So you can see quite quickly if it's something that also can be moved to other places and used there as well. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just say now that the question is about competing globally, that I was Consul General of Denmark to New York, and I had the opportunity to take both the Prime Minister of Denmark and the Mayor of Copenhagen to meet with the then Mayor, Michael Bloomberg. And of course, Michael Bloomberg was extremely data-driven. He put himself in a room like this is where his desk was, and around the room you would see different data from New York. You know, how many waste baskets had been picked up, how long were the waiting lines for the public telephone system, etc. So you would think that for Copenhagen or Oslo or Helsinki to compete against a city like New York with a mayor who comes from the industry is impossible. But the thing is that the New York does not have the things that I mentioned, that Nikolai mentioned, the trust. They don't even have the internet access, so about 40% of the population doesn't have it. So that is why we are actually able to compete with cities like New York and other huge cities around the world.
Great. That was
Lastly, I think the key word that was mentioned here also is infrastructure and internet connection, because that we also have in common in the Nordic countries, that we have first-class digital infrastructure. And I think it's ironic that a small country like Norway, for instance, has one of the best and fastest mobile internet services in the world, given our peculiar geography.
E-com industry, you know, the telcos are so good.
It's not because we have such a great minister. No.
Well, now it's not. It shifts a bit. It used to be industry, now it's the ministry. But I think also that we need to take into consideration how we can sort of preserve that. One of the reasons we have these good networks in Norway is that collaboration, where sort of the municipalities, the counties, and the government realize what they have to do to make sure it's possible. And they're not doing a good enough job yet, but they're sort of getting there. Possible to build networks that are sustainable and that have the capacity we need. And you don't have to go far. Go to Berlin. They haven't got a cell phone network that functions, actually, in Berlin, the capital of Germany. And that we also need to remember when we're going to collaborate and export, is that when we build systems functioning in our really sort of basically mobile cell phone network-based societies, The societies we want to export to, they haven't got that infrastructure in the below. So we also need to understand how can we have this function when you haven't got people that are online all the time. And that will be our cue card to actually include everyone, the few, relatively few in our society that isn't into this. Find ways to get them in also, and then we will succeed with exporting.
Iceland is even smaller, and we're doing really good. So, you know, you don't have to have a really great country or a big country to be able to do that. And yeah, I've also lived in Berlin, and it was a culture shock.
Okay, okay.
When it
I
comes
can
to the
imagine.
internet.
Yeah.
You're not going to make Iceland Berlin again.
No.
Next time.
No walls. No. Yeah.
Okay. So the next question, did we get our paper flyer questions in as well? Because yeah, so you actually you can actually vote as well for those two if you like. So we'll take the next one in line. How do you see the Nordics being able to compete in a global world? What are your... Yeah, but that
Oh,
was
that
just...
was one.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we just... So now we really have to stay sharp here.
There was
what
one
is...
that moved up.
Yeah, I just imagine. What is the best way to compete between cities and companies?
Cooperate.
Cooperate, sorry. But the other one is... Yeah, the other one is... Maybe we should take that one instead. So...
Yeah, well, I can start, since this is something that I care very much about, because we're now developing a new innovations and smart cities policy in Reykjavik, and we have been discussing very much the importance of creating the platform between both the city, companies, entrepreneurs, researchers, everyone that have fresh ideas, and just bring them together, because just by being the city and creating that platform and making a stable platform that has a continuous relationship, you're both able to bring together people with capital, people with ideas, and companies, and because you give the platform some trust and some status just by doing it. So I find that really important, that cities you don't have to do it so complicated. Sometimes you just have to make these formal connections.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Simplicity.
Well, I think as I mentioned in my introduction, we are now going to establish a new program for cooperation, collaboration between startup companies and the public sector. But I think it has a lot to do with culture, really. And if you have a culture for innovation and you allow companies, small and big, to actually take part in developing your public services, digital public services, I think you have a lot to gain from that. And we are inspired by the Startup in Residence program in San Francisco, where you have the city posing concrete challenges, and then you have startups responding to that. They have a similar kind of program in Scotland. They have one in Spain as well. So we're looking at how we can implement that kind of thinking in Norway as well. But many cities are quite good at using the room that's already there when it comes to purchasing power, using your purchasing power in the right way. So we have the opportunities for innovation partnerships, innovative purchasing, and it's not used enough today to really raise innovation and make new things happen.
I think also one of the things we need to do is figure out what is the infrastructure for our time that it's the public sector and cities' job to provide. Looking back, it was roads, parks, lots to build houses on, stuff like that, which it still is. But in addition, we've got new types of infrastructure that needs to be provided, one of them being data. This fits and then how do we figure out what of all the data the public sector possesses is to be considered part of that infrastructure, and how do you get it out there? And and also all the time looking at how do we need to collaborate, how do we need to define the line between a public sector task and a private sector task, because that's not a static line. And being good at that is very, very important. But especially, I would say, realizing that the public sector doesn't own the data for itself, it doesn't exist for itself, it has a function. And we have to sort of move to looking at it as the public sector sort of maintaining and providing the data and sort of curating it and making sure it's safe, it's got its integrity in order, stuff like that. So, and figuring out what are the additions to the old school infrastructure that the public sector now needs to provide. So both the private commercial sector, so that the individuals, the NGOs, etc., can also build upon that.
Yeah. Anything to add?
I might just mention as well the project I mentioned in my introduction, but it's something that we have in Reykjavik, this collaboration between many, between the city and the universities and these innovation centers and many good partners that has joined us in creating this social accelerator. So in that you can participate as an individual, as a team, as an entrepreneur, as a company, even if you have a new, fresh idea that can benefit citizens on a social level in some way, you can join and get money and help to advance your idea. So yeah, there are many different platforms, but this is one idea.
So I can see that the questions are changing all the time. Can you take the questions out that we've already been through, please? Otherwise we might break. Did you have anything to add to this question? Any of you? No? So, so what would be the best way to involve citizens with smart tools, smart city tools?
I would say that one of the most important things when it comes to that is to be open, have an open approach. Not have some people sit in a committee somewhere and define how this tool is going to be used and how citizens should interact with this and not on that, etc. But really sort of start opening up and having an open, people-oriented approach to the issues and problems. It reminded me of an example from Oslo that is old school, but really still really great. The city of Oslo, must have been about 5 years ago maybe, made a copy of Fix My Street, which is a brilliant way of copying it, by the way. Should be encouraged more to do more like that. But the thing they didn't do was alter how they worked internally when citizens sent messages into the city through the system. It's called Bymelding, this app, and I've had this communication going with the relevant government body in the city of Oslo for a couple of years. I've sent the messages many times saying that these trees here, they're blocking the view to the cars coming from the other side, and that's a problem because then we might just crash because we can't see each other before it's too late. And I haven't got the number of messages I've sent in, but every time I got the same response within the regulatory demands to when the city must reply and the formalities of the reply, etc., when they say that, well, this road, even though it's in the middle of Oslo, is owned by the state road government body. You have to contact them. Here's their email, here's their phone number. And I was sort of hell-bent on not doing that, so I just kept pushing this message in there. Yeah. And in May this year, something has happened. Because the reply I got then was, thank you, we've had someone out there to look at these trees. They conclude the trees weren't in the way, but that's a whole different discussion. And that's what we need to do. We have to shift the way we're working based upon the technology we've put to use. So when you ask citizens to input data to help you improve the city, you have to make sure that you also adapt how you work so that you can utilize the value the citizens create by inputting data.
I agree with that approach. I think a user-centric approach is very important. And also when it comes to, now Torgeir was talking about sort of the physical city in many ways, but the digital services as well. Our ambition now with the new strategy for digitalization of the public sector is that we should have proactive public services so that you don't have to apply for every single service that you need. So for instance, if you have a baby, the only thing that the public sector is not involved in is actually making the baby. After that, they're involved in every step of the way. But every single service has its own dynamic, its own application that you need to fill out, whether it be place in the kindergarten or place in schools or place in after-school facilities, or be it all the other things that you actually are eligible to get when you get a child, be paternal, maternal leave, that kind of thing. So, and today these are completely single streams of application processes. So why can't we have a service where we know that when you have a baby, you will need these things and we will offer them to you without you asking for it? And that is a completely change of mentality from having the system at the center to having the user or the citizen at the center. And we are, in our strategy, we've looked at 7 life events that we think are either concerns a lot of people or are particularly relevant to those people that it concerns. And we're going to prioritize those, but of course that's not to say that we're not going to work on other things as well, to make that happen. And it's really about mentality. But to get there, we need to share data in a completely new way. There's lots of debate on the data that each and every one of us share with the big platform companies of the world. And that's an important debate. But in the public sector, it's the complete opposite that's the case. We need to share a lot more data. And the only one's principle, which we have adopted many years ago, but which we're still not close to fulfilling, that you only have to give information once to the public sector, and then they will share among themselves to make sure that they know you at the relevant time for the relevant service. So there's a big shift there that we need to go through.
You had a?
Yes, I just a very brief. There are 2 ways to make sure that you involve the citizens. The first is to make sure that what you're providing creates value for them, that they actually want to use it. And the second way to do it, and that's the way that we introduced our digital signature in Denmark, is simply to say this is mandatory. So you can also do that if you believe that you need to move people over on this platform, you make it mandatory.
Yeah, I really agree with what you were saying about the user-friendly approach. We are now working on a huge project in Reykjavik evolved around the services and a new service policy that is turning the system upside down, putting the user, the citizen, on top of the system, and everything is being looked at from that perspective, not from the perspective of the system. And if you see some blocks, you should just start. How do we solve these issues? And we're working on these issues we're taking like certain tasks and solving them instead of just trying to solve everything at the same time. So we're doing it like month by month, one task at a time. And slowly we're going through all the services, and definitely that's huge.
Yeah. So
Can I just add to
brief comment, please.
yeah, the mandatory issue, because I think that's a double-edged sword. It might be useful to make some sort of use of some national components mandatory, but on the other hand, you might stifle innovation and or hinder innovation by doing so, because what we need in this cooperation between the private and public sector is to actually allow the private sector to innovate on top of our digital infrastructure and the national components that we have there. I think that's very important. So we should be cautious about the mandatory approach, I think, to make sure that we're not standing in the way of better solutions as a public sector.
What you need to make sure is that when you make something mandatory, you limit that to the systems or solutions of components or features or whatever that you need for the rest of the sort of the system and the innovation to actually work. Oh. So that you need to make sure, like in these, as you need a digital signature, like you have in Denmark. You need to have that. And once that but you don't necessarily have to have that digital signature. You can have, there's many ways of doing it, but you have that you need to have one.
Exactly.
So you sort of make sure that people can sign digitally, and then you can move on with lots of other solutions.
Yes.
Should we change a bit so we can face other people? Because I'm standing with the back, and these don't see your face, so maybe we should turn a bit.
Change?
Yeah, just a bit.
Okay.
So was it possible to take away the questions that we've already been through? So should we take the ethics question as bonus by the context, and how do a deal with that when sharing data. And please be brief in your comments.
Well, for the first, I think, do we agree on what ethics is and what's ethical?
No.
And ethical for who? On behalf of who? It's really hard, but you just need to insert ethics as one of the standardized and always in there parts of a project, a process, a decision-making process, whatever. You need to make sure that these are one of the things you consider. If you look at how the public sector now does casework, there's always an eye on the regulation. What does the regulation say for this field or topic? You need to have ethics in there as one of those things that are always considered. And make sure it's a continuous, ongoing debate, because there's no black and white answer to what ethics is and where the lines should be drawn.
I think this is a very...
I totally agree. It's a very complicated question, but of course, if we're trying to build tools and collect data that we can use around the world or in the Nordics, for example, we have to have a common platform, and we have to agree on some, basic principles there, I guess. And of course, it's gonna be quite connected to the highest standards, I guess, because for everyone to feel comfortable with the usage, it has to be like that, I think.
Well, I agree that we need a common approach, and I think it's very good that the EU has a high-level expert group working on the ethical framework for AI. The OECD has made 5 principles on ethics and AI. They are on a general level, I think, but the devil is always in the detail.
That's it.
And of course, when the G20 was able to adopt the OECD principles, I think that goes to show that they were not that detailed, because the G20 is a group of countries that don't necessarily speak the same language when it comes to the use of AI. So the work the EU is doing is important, and I agree that we need a common platform, a common approach, especially in Europe. And I think in the Nordic countries, it should be easy to have a common approach, both for how we apply AI, but also how we develop AI. When it comes to issues such as privacy, I think privacy by design is a very good principle and should be the foundation for all our work with privacy. In Norway, at least the Datatilsynet is I think very positive to new technology, although they are there to safeguard privacy. But they don't see necessarily that there is a mismatch between the two. They can be combined, but you need to think about it from the beginning.
No? Okay. Should we take... what are the biggest challenges to be solved in the Nordic cities using smart city tools? Yeah?
I think one of the biggest challenges is transportation, all aspects of transportation, because basically there are 3 problems with today's transportation. It's not sustainable, it's not green, it's not clean. Secondly, we're wasting a lot of time. And thirdly, it's dangerous. So we need to solve those 3 issues. And I live in an area called Marienlyst-Blindern, close to Oslo University, and I drive to the embassy in Frogner. That would take 4 minutes in car if there was no traffic. It usually takes 17, 18 minutes, and which is often a waste of time, unless I'm listening to NRK Politisk Kvarter and Nikolai is on, then of course it's time really well spent. But I also use 4 other means of transportation. I use elsparkcykel, the electric scooter. I use bicycle, I walk, or I take the public transportation. That takes 40 minutes for 3 kilometers. So basically, we need to reduce the traveling. When you are on your bike or your electric scooter, it's a fight, or even walking, you're afraid of being killed by another electric scooter or something else. So I think we need to use smart city tools to solve this so that we get quickly from A to B, and we do it in a safe way, and we do it in a green way.
And healthy way.
that would be good as well. But you can always go to the gym.
Yeah, I think you can add to that in a healthy way, add health to it.
Yeah.
Lots of health issues we need to resolve
That's,
also.
yeah,
Because
just to make
transportation and health is connected, of course, but health in itself. And I think, on purpose in misinterpreting that question, I would say that one of the biggest challenges we need to solve, to be able to solve big challenges with smart cities, is technical debt. All the systems we have that don't talk together, that can't exchange data, all the systems we have we can't secure, all the systems we have we can't expose to the internet, stuff like that. We need to figure a way to handle that, because a lot of the time that is blocking the possibility of having systems connect, having them work together. And for instance, a simple thing like, you said this public transportation and the L-scooters and the bikes, having those connected, having those talk together, and solving issues with the systems directly. Like one of my favorites, which I hope is going to happen one day, I keep bantering Ruter about it in Oslo, is that every time the subway stops is delayed, the tram is delayed, the boats, the trains, the buses, the vehicles themselves are aware of it. So they can actually tell, say, the kindergartens and the schools along their route that I'm delayed. Me, the subway, is delayed. And the people on board don't need to call, and the people working in the kindergarten don't need to pick up the phone and be on the phone with delayed parents, because they know the subway is delayed. There's tons of stuff like that we can do. We will start dipping into everyday practical issues that will make the society a better place to live in.
Yeah.
I think we've just started scratching the surface of what's going to be possible. So even the cities that, sorry Stavanger, that call themselves smart today, I think it's just the beginning. We're just seeing sort of the first glimpse of what will be possible. And using data in completely new ways to optimize transportation, for instance, is going to be crucial. And you can't just only rely on the data that's in the public sector. Now, the mobile phone companies probably know more about transportation patterns in the city than what the public transportation companies do. If you pair the data from the two, you can really start looking at how we can solve public transportation's biggest problem, which is that it takes you from a place you are not to a place you're not going. I mean, we need to go from A to B, not from station to station. And we need to do it in a seamless way. That means that traveling 3 kilometers shouldn't take 17 or 40 minutes by public transportation. This is possible to solve, and I think traffic planning is definitely one of the issues. Urban planning in general, to look at this layer above transportation. How do we actually plan for, where do we regulate new workspaces? Where do we regulate new apartments? To make sure that our city actually functions in a smarter way in the physical sphere. And then, of course, Torgeir is into a crucial point, and that's making the technical system actually work better, and just make sure that they're up to date. But that's a tall order for many municipalities, of course. Because yes, the biggest cities, they have a lot of resources. The smallest municipalities, however, they don't. So I think cooperation among municipalities in regions is one of the answers to that, of course with help from the government level as well. So what we're seeing here in Rogaland County, I think is a good example. Digi Rogaland, you have Digi Hordaland, where municipalities are actually cooperating. In Agder region, you have all the municipalities working together on welfare technology. Because they realize that by themselves they're not going to solve this challenge, but together they might actually have a chance of cracking it.
Yeah, I just want to say I agree with what you have mentioned, mostly the environmental issues and the transportation issues is really hugely important, but I also want to mention garbage disposal and environmental issues when it comes to that, and making sustainable energy and all these issues. But I also want to mention the challenge of implementing all of these new tools and technologies and possibilities while still respecting people's privacy. Because we don't want to, have all of these tools and all of these options, but at the same time implement a surveillance society. So that's a huge issue. How do we do that? That's not so simple.
Yeah, that's why it has to be in cooperation with the citizens. Okay, so I think we will stop here. Thank you very much. And so we didn't get through all the questions, but at least we got more in depth with the questions that we answered. So now I would like to say thank you to you, and then we will continue with a small session at the tables. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, just before we go to coffee break, do I have a PowerPoint of this one, or just... I do. So, just to sum up and to process what has been going on at the scene here, please take a quick round at the table. So, sorry, this is the wrong. Okay, so it's not here. Just take it off then. So, could you take just half a minute to think about each of you? What did you learn about the Nordic strength positions? What did you learn about the Nordic strength positions? And get ready to tell your mate at the table about this on a small video. So what did you learn about the Nordic strength positions? And when you've thought and prepared what you want to say, you can take your phone. You can give it. Now this is a matter of trust, we learned. Trust is a very important thing. And maybe the thing we trust most and don't want to give away is our phone. So now we will test the Nordic trust. Pass on your phone to somebody at the table. And then this other person will make your video where you state what you find are the Nordic strength positions. And after that, you feel free. Are you ready? And who is the first brave person finding a mobile phone? Yeah, we can see it at this table. Just swap 2 persons. So, those of you who prepared a video, please feel free to post it on Twitter. Snabelag, hvad hedder det på engelsk? At Nordic Cities, or wherever you like. Anyway, so now there's a coffee break, and please bring all your things, because if you are attending session 2, you will be seated in a different place, maybe. So please bring your things, and thank you very much. Have a nice coffee break. jeg slet.
cirka. Nå, det gik godt.
Gør jeg stadig.
Det gik godt. Det synes
Jeg hører, om de har ikke slukket. Har de slukket?
super. Det gik meget godt. Det var lige lidt med slidesene der til sidst. Ja, der manglede nogle slides jo til sidst.
Min?
Nå, der manglede det der checkout. Det ved jeg ikke. Det var der måske ikke en slide på.
Jo, jeg har lavet dem, men jeg tror, de... Men altså, jeg har jo ikke været tydelig nok. Det er ikke dem, der er
Men
tjekket.
jeg tror, for fornemmelsen, når man sidder her som publikum, så har det bare kørt.
Ja.
Ja.
Altså, jeg synes, der var flere ting. Ja, for det første, så skal vi... Altså, hvis det skal virke, at de skal tale sammen med borgerne, så er det altså virkelig vigtigt, at de er 5 ved hvert bord. Og det var... og det, jeg ved, I gjorde alt det.
Men der var mange, der ikke ville.
Ja, der er rigtig mange, der ikke vil, der sætter sig bare med en computer, ikke? Men så falder det fuldstændig til jorden. Altså, de der dialog og
Men
aktiviteter.
det er også svært at styre det, først de er gået i gang med oplæg, og så skulle
Jamen, det er netop det. Det er det, præcis. Det er så ubehageligt.
Men
Altså, I kan ikke gøre det bedre.
ting som kunne være bedre. Dere hadde 150 mennesker her inne. EU hadde 15.
Ja, we are ready to start. So please find a seat and please fill up the tables at this part of the room. So anywhere there's a vacant seat, there's one here. So. Great. Welcome to this second session of the Nordic Smart City Summit. Now we will focus on the Nordic collaboration cases, where we will hear some more about the different projects by the project leads. Focus will be on how to scale up and export the solutions, the projects, but also on the power of network and the power of collaboration in the Nordics. So the first speaker, welcome to you, Hilde Hukkelberg, Director of the London Office of Innovation Norway. Hilde will talk about scaling up and export of Nordic solutions internationally.
Yep. Thank you very much, and thank you so much for inviting me here today. I'm delighted to be here. I'm actually just going to say a few words about Innovation Norway. Innovation Norway, we have offices across the world, and we also have a lot of regional offices in Norway. What we do is that we help Norwegian businesses to grow and innovate, and obviously to export. I'm going to start my presentation focusing on high-tech cities, because to me, sitting in London, but also being based in Silicon Valley previously, it's all about being within the high-tech space. And I see a lot happening now. That's very exciting. This is the eastern waterfront in Toronto, Canada. And this is actually how a company called Sidewalk Labs, you might want to take a note of that, because that's Alphabet, a formerly Google company. They're now looking into transforming the waterfront in Toronto into a high-tech city. So obviously what they wanted to do is what they've done with the internet, making that searchable. They want to make the city searchable. So the interesting part about this project is that actually, if you see the high-rises, this is Snøhetta. That's a well-known architect company here in Norway. They designed the high-rises that's going to be made out of timber. I think the high-tech cities, they have entered our space and they're going to stay. And it's all about how to use the data and technology. So for this session, the workshop session now, I'm going to inspire you a bit, hopefully, about how you can use data and technology exactly to make better decisions. So I have to take you back to my hometown, London. And we actually, in Innovation Norway, collectively, we launched our first Smart City initiative back in 2015. And that was actually in London and in Madrid. And we knew then back that we wanted to work within the smart society space. What we didn't know was actually that it was really huge. It was like a huge umbrella. Underneath, it was a lot of technologies. And we looked at the UK side, and it was similar. It was AI, it was data. And then we saw there was a lot of ambitions, and they were going in all different directions. We saw that we had some similarities. We had deep tech frontrunners, both in Norway, both in the UK. And Norway is very similar to the Nordics, so we've been closely aligned with our Nordic similar organizations in London. Domain knowledge is extremely important, and also the commitment for the long term. We then looked at what the UK wanted to achieve up until 2040. I think that's a good stretch in terms of time. And we decided actually then to go into the deep tech. And for us now, within the Norwegian, but also I find this similar in the Nordics, is how we bring the domain, which is to the right one missing topic, and that's how we can get all the data science tests that we will need actually to make the smart city or the high-tech city. There is a shortage. And in London, you have more of them, but still in London there is soon to come a lot more shortage. But London, of course, they have top universities of talent. They have London, which is the second most connected hub in the world. And they have the money and the funding from investors, from industrial players. They also been able to now showcase breakthroughs. And for us, that just proves that AI is actually developing really fast. It means for the smart city space as well that we can actually transform in a much more rapid way than I think we able to understand at the moment. This is just DeepMind, another Google company that developed this AI algorithm for eye diseases. So back to what is Innovation Norway's role, because obviously we're utilizing London as a global high-tech hub. 6 years back, we decided, and that was before we entered into the smart city space, we decided that digital, that was something that we wanted to work within. We wanted to actually grow more scale-ups out of Norway, so that was another ambition. So we set out to develop accelerator. So far, we've taken 52 companies through this. At this point, it's just Norwegian companies. We think there is actually an opportunity to do this quite easily on a Nordic scale as well. So that's why I'm here today to invite you to see how we can get that up running. It's actually a combination of scale-ups, so typically high-tech digital front-runners together with the domains, and that's here for the Norway part, Equinor, Telenor, Tomra, Cognite, all the companies that with loads of data and willing to spend time and needing to spend time in terms of developing an ecosystem, a strategic approach to the new AI and machine learning world that we're entering. This is just how we work with Equinor. Obviously, they are going to do a lot within AI, machine learning going forward. And they actually invited us to work on the scale-up side to scout for companies, not only in Norway and the Nordics, but also globally. And this is how we see this world is developing. We decided to partner up with Level 39. So this is incubator in London. They have over 200 companies at the time being in this space. And for us to actually see that there is some result, was mentioning of New York and that you need to keep an eye on the dashboard. To actually grow companies, to be successful doing the scale-ups. Obviously what Innovation Norway will do is to do some initial funding. We have loans, we have grants, we have different programs. And then we want that to trigger external funding. So that's on the lower end. And then that's supposed to create growth. And what we see so far, after 6 years, that we actually been able now to showcase with the portfolio of 43 scale-ups that we have done in all those years, that they are growing. And they are creating jobs, and this is moving forward. A side effect of working with those scale-ups is actually that we're creating a universe of contacts. That could be individuals, executives, it could be companies, it could be a larger one, it could be a smaller one. But the key is that you need those networks in order to actually be successful in this space. then we are riding a big wave. And being in Silicon Valley, that's the most exciting thing you can do. I think for us, the success formula has actually been to see how we can bring together this space. You see Norway on the right, that's where we started. Then we moved quickly to the UK internationally. And in the middle, that's just to showcase you the last cohort, which was then 15 companies. Within 6 months that we run the program each time, we were able to connect them with 184 companies and closer to 500 different executives from all over the world. And lots of these organizations, they are active in the Nordics, and not necessarily we found that they were based in Oslo or in Stavanger or in Norway. It's actually a lot of the other Nordic cities, at least for the bigger ones, that they are based. We have also been able to utilize leading global AI experts. So this is a former AI CTO in Microsoft. He was in Oslo, and we did a large event a year ago. We did also events in April this year in London with 200 leaders from around the world. And the topic was AI and how to deploy it, how to actually make use of it. Of course, we have the minister as a huge backer of our initiative, and it's important for us that we can feed back the inputs that we get, and then we also can, I believe, do this in a much faster way. In terms of upcoming events, we're now working together with Oslo Met. There is going to be a large conference in November in Oslo, from really everything from the large tech companies, but also the domain, and I believe the cities and municipalities. They need all to come together. And I think London is just one hub. There are loads of hubs around the world, but the most important thing now for us and what we're looking into at the moment is to create the use cases. So hopefully, like within a year, we will be able to show you actually the real innovations put into practice as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Hilde. So before we continue, I think now Hilde as well mentioned the importance of network, and you are all sitting together with people that you might not know. So I would ask you now to make a brief presentation at the table, your name, your organizations, and then about 5 words about your favorite smart city solution. Yeah?
hvis vi skal holde fast i den der papirflyver ting, så tænker jeg... Am I on? Yeah. Okay, so I hope you got some inspiration from each other on some favorite smart city solutions. So during this session, you have the option of asking questions to us on the scene in two ways. Either you can use the app, and apparently you might have different entrants in the app, so it might be a bit difficult to explain how you find it, depending on which sessions you are in and so. But anyway, you just press the button somewhere on interaction and you can pose questions. Your questions has to be relevant to all Nordic countries. And we will sum up the questions and prioritize them if there are too many. And then use them as a basis for our Q&A after the presentations of the projects by the cities. That's one way, the digital way. Another way is to write your question on a piece of paper on your table, and then fly it up to this scene. And then you can also test if you still know how to make those paper flies here. In C1 attempt that almost made it. But we will pick them up even if you don't make it, and don't be shy. We will go pretty long to pick them up. So I think it's time now for Kim Spiegelberg, who is the chairman of the Nordic Smart City Network. You will make an introduction to the network? Yes?
Hello. First of all, I would like to welcome all of you on behalf of Nordic Edge and Nordic Innovation, and of course the Nordic Smart City Network. And I'll just give a brief introduction before we go into the very exciting projects that have been made, and hopefully they can be used as some kind of inspiration for all of you. And actually, our Smart City Network, it started 2 years ago at Nordic Edge on the Wednesday. We were a lot of people from different cities. Over some years, we have been talking to each other. Should we make a network? How could we work together? And then we mailed around, and as many as we could gather got into this room, and we decided, yes, it makes sense to work together and learn from each other. And some of us, we even had taken the chance to prepare a little letter of intent. So we all agreed, this is more or less what we are going to do. We want to work with knowledge sharing, of course, steal and copy all the ideas and solutions you have in one city. Why not do that instead of inventing everything yourself? Just steal it, use it, and I can tell you we have been doing that quite a lot ever since. Then, of course, it's about the collaboration. We are having a lot of test beds in the city. If you can use them, you can test solutions in more than one city, and you can make that much more relevant for companies. Then we were also saying we need some common proposal for Nordic and EU programs, because should we just meet and talk and exchange? That's very, very good. But we thought the real value and the real way to get together was by working together on something very concrete. So we wanted to have some projects together. And the fourth thing is, we said it's also about making a common Nordic brand. It's about making the Nordics visible to the world instead of just Copenhagen, where I come from, or Stavanger, or other cities. And it's also about, if you can make some solutions that work in more than one city, then it will also be easier to export it to other cities. And then we were really lucky. We got hooked up with the Nordic Innovation, and they said, we like your idea of a network. We would like to support a project. And then it ended up, we were 14 cities at that time. We signed up, and we got a total budget of 4.2 million Norwegian kroners to set up our website. You can see the address over there if you want to have a look. You can also see videos and some of the projects there. But the most important thing is you make 5 projects in 5 different cities in 5 Nordic countries, and then you transfer the solution and exchange ideas between the cities. And that can be done in many, many ways, high level, low level. But the very important thing is that we are going to present 3 of them to you now, and we hope you will get inspired by how can you work together, government, city, and also with the private companies. So thank you very much and welcome.
So now there will be, as Kim said, a presentation of the project. Focus will be on the Nordic collaboration projects, how they can be scaled up and exported to other countries. The presentations will be by the lead of the project with, in this case, the first case will be by Kajsa and Kajsa Spilling from Finland and Gunnar Crawford from Norway, who will explain about the project Agile Piloting.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kajsa Spilling. I come from Forum Virium Helsinki. We are the city-owned innovation company, and we bring in the city partners, the companies, academia, and of course the residents to work together for creating urban futures, better smart services. And today, because we're talking about Nordic collaboration, so we really wanted to showcase that, so we are here as a duo.
And my name is Gunnar Crawford. I come from the city of Stavanger. I'm head of the smart city of Stavanger. And I also got some beard that sticks in the way. Today I would like to show you from a practical note what this kind of collaboration means. So Kajsa is going to speak about this specific project, but I'm going to tell you how does it really work for me. When it comes to the network, Kim had a very nice introduction about the network, but for me it's on a practical note. This means that I can actually call, I can pick up the phone and I can call Kajsa, Kim, or anyone else in the network and get sort of fast, quick answers to things I've been thinking about. Also to find out, is there grounds for collaboration? And it gets to be personal. So we know each other now, so we can actually call each other and say, hey, there's a new project going on, should we apply for money, etc., etc. So it's transfer of knowledge, it's best practices, but also this financing from the Nordic Innovation is actually helping us a lot because it breaks down some barriers. We don't really have to talk about the money all the time, we can actually look past the competition and actually just share. So love competition is really, there's no challenges when it comes to that. This really works. So let's see an example on what we are cooperating on.
Actually, a year ago, we met here in Stavanger. It was the Nordic Edge Expo, of course. And we had just started a collaboration project within Nordic Innovation, Nordic Urban Living Labs project. And we had the cities of Helsinki, Tampere, and of course Stavanger working together with the theme of wayfinding, digital guidance, and better city experiences. And actually, what we found out was that because the cities of Tampere and Helsinki were both doing agile piloting in their own six-pack cities collaboration project, Stavanger got really interested of this method. And well, I'm going to tell you some more about that. So what is agile piloting? What is agile piloting program? Well, we the cities have the best problems. So agile piloting program is a way to invite startups, small companies to test, pilot their good ideas in real life experience. And actually it's about procuring pilots that run about from 3 to 6 months, and the sum of the procurement is very low. We've had up until 8,000 in general, sometimes a bit more, sometimes a bit less. And actually, we started in 2016 running pilots in Smart Kalasatama, which is the model area for smart city development in Helsinki. And we've been running about 20 pilots there related to different thematics areas of smart city, from healthcare to smart city infra and solutions. And further on, in the city of Helsinki, other projects have been run related to school smart mobility, up to 50 pilots in Helsinki today. And because we've had this very good six-pack cities collaboration in Finland, so today there's already over 100 pilots run in the whole Finland. And I think all the Finnish biggest cities have adopted the program and found their best ways to use it for collaborating with startups and really like kind of accelerating smart city development. And actually this Nordic collaboration was also a good way for us to see that would this work also in the Nordics. So why agile piloting? I always say it's a way to co-create value. The small companies need first market references, business cases, feedback from the end users, but also from other players of the ecosystem. The piloting provides a way to gain new networks, partnerships, and also it brings a way to work together around the same table, not like on each on their side of the table, but around the same table. It also is a way to engage citizens as users, co-creators, as experts of their everyday. And well, for the cities, it also provides future use cases, understanding that can be used for future procurement or, for example, regulation to bring this kind of development forward. Well, I say also it's all about co-creation. So we have a process that we've been kind of trying to share. We have documented it in a cookbook, so the recipe is easy to copy. And we have ways to see that co-creation is present in each phase of the process. To start with, identifying and engaging the stakeholders, then later on, co-creating with the wider ecosystem and sharing the experiences. And of course, then scaling up. And the pilots can really, and the learnings can be scaled up. Models, new partnerships, and services. And also the city, it works as an urban lab. So the city can provide buildings, their infra, data, services to work as a platform for these agile pilots. Well, piloting also then helps to identify the challenges for scaling up, which is always the problem. So there is a lack of business ecosystems. There can be issues about legislation and regulation that we bump into when piloting. Also then the users are kind of very slow in changing their behavior, which can be hard for small players. But I mean, when taking small steps, you learn and then find the ways for hopping over. Maybe it's not this pilot that copes it, but it can be the next one. And we find the way to also scale up the learnings. So it's about reusing models and sharing of the experiences. Like in this case, I'm so happy how actually I bumped into one from Harald's team who was discussing with the city of Bergen yesterday about agile pilots. So I found that very a good surprise. And then also translating results of the pilots to recommendations for the city. So really it's about learning as much as possible. And we've really seen that small pilots can then scale up in new ecosystems, partnerships, or in new projects. And sometimes also, normally these are very early phase prototypes, but sometimes it really can give a boost for this specific pilot to go further, or then give ideas for someone else. So really, it's not about one pilot, more or less about the learnings. But then let us hear what Gunnar will be doing next.
So we heard about the agile piloting through our network. And we heard a beautiful story about how Forum Virium were able to sort of stretch the rubber band of the procurement to the maximum without it sort of failing. And we thought, if they're doing this in such an agile manner, maybe we could copy it. And what was really great was that when we approached them, all their material was, of course, they had the Finnish version, but they also had the English version. So it's very easy to copy the concept. And being within EU law, anyway, even in Norway, it's easy to copy that side of it all as well. So what we're doing these days, we took this through the political system. I actually had to seek approval. I told my politicians that this time around, I want to spend a lot of money on a pilot, a fair amount at least of money on a pilot. It was my team's, my division's money, but I still needed approval. But I told them something fairly new in the political system. I told them, this time we're going to copy. And we're going to copy 100%. And they're not used to that. They really want to reinvent the wheel and sort of start from scratch, be the first and best. Everyone wants to be best, right? But this time they said, okay, this sounds very wise. This gives us sort of a head start. We can do this in a much faster manner. Of course, doing agile piloting in Stavanger will need some sort of local adaptation. We need to do some adjustments. It could be concerning law, it could be concerning the size of the companies we want to work with. There's questions, am I allowed to only work with local companies, or do I have to sort of take in the whole world? Those kind of decisions has to be made, and the law has to be checked. So where are we now? We are actually looking at the various thematical areas. We can choose like any area to do the piloting. There's so many problems to be solved, right? So we are trying to choose. I would wish I could launch it today. I can't because we are in the decision phase about which areas. But I can promise you, within November, we will have our thematical areas out there, and hopefully we started the competition. Because we're going to try to find, with a similar model, we're going to try to find, let's say, 5 to 10 companies that we can do the piloting together with, and I'll finance the piloting. This is no free ride for us. It's actually paid piloting. Of course, they'll probably spend more time, more money on this than we can actually pay them, but still, it's partially financed. And one of the reasons for doing this is that we are able to fail fairly fast if there's something that doesn't work out. If there's one company, 2, even 10 companies that don't really work out, we fail fairly fast and we don't lose a lot of money. But at the same time, if 1 of 10 companies is successful when we do this, then it's a great success. And then we probably spend less money because the normal process would be that we planned for 18 months and then we didn't, and then we started the testing. So I'm really psyched about doing this, and I'm really eager to get started. So everything is ready, we just have to choose the thematic areas.
Sounds super good, and I think today is really a good day also for Stavanger, because there are at least cities from Finland, at least Vantaa, Turku, Espoo, Tampere, who have their own experiences as well, and their own adaptations. So I think it's also the strength of the network that we can really kind of bring all those experiences together, and then each city then has also has their own path and best ways to take on.
Totally agree. And we've been looking. We try to find a way of do innovation in procurement. So changing the law to also, or changing the procurement method so it actually fits the smaller size companies. And this, hopefully, this is the one thing we need. So let's see now.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much to Kajsa and Gunnar. So I think we are a bit. We have extra minutes, that's fine. So now I would like to welcome Malene Højland Pedersen from Copenhagen Smart City. And Malene will talk about People and Flows project, how to get a network and contacts through the network.
Yes. So my name is Malene, and I work in the Copenhagen Solution Lab, which is a lab in the city of Copenhagen working on smart city development and how is it that we can use data and support the way that we both manage and develop the city. I'm the project manager of one of the projects in the network, which is called People and Flow. And I'm just going to briefly talk a bit about the case. In Copenhagen, we are getting a brand new metro, the City Circle it's called, and there's a map over it there. And we expect that flows are going to change quite a lot. It's opening this Sunday, so in 5 days is it now? And we've been waiting for it for 10 years. In that context, we're really interested in knowing a bit more on how is it that we develop all these new stations within the city, and how is it that the urban life is going to be affected by these new stations, where there's going to be much more people coming in. So that's the actual case of getting new movement data. So this project has been going on for I think a bit over 2 years now, and there's a lot of different instances and cases you could choose, and it's everything from how to maintain the city, how to decide which streets to go out and do snow clearing, and how to do actual planning. That you need flow data to make decisions better. But this was the final case that we chose. Just to get you a bit better picture, this is the town hall square, and they're getting a brand new urban space in the same matter. And the pictures up there is where the sensor is going to be placed. Or is placed. It was placed 2 days ago, so that's a really good story now. The road to that point has been very bumpy, to be quite honest. It's not always that difficult or easy to put up sensors in the city. It can be quite tricky. But we managed to get it up before the opening, and we'll get a week of data before the opening. It's a bit, but it's not as much as we really wanted to have. But that's what we have, and that's what we'll work with. We're doing a project together with Geo and a company called Springboard, and I think that's really the strength of this particular pilot case, because we're combining the traditional way that we've been doing measurements of people in urban spaces, the manual count in the city, together with the digital count. And how is it that we can use these two data sets together? And how is it that we can use one or the other instead of each other? And in what case does it really matter to have the digital counts? Because it is a lot of effort, it is a lot of money to put up a sensor, So you need to be very aware of when it really adds on some extra knowledge. Yeah, so we'll do the before-after measurements. And also, like, a fun story, when you talk about putting up sensors in the city, it requires you to do lots of funny things during the project. In this particular instance, we had to suddenly climb the roof of the town hall, and we did not expect that coming. So we went to a meeting with the guy in charge of like the maintenance in the city hall, and we were just there to hear whether we could actually put it up there. And suddenly I was standing in flip-flops on the roof of the town hall. Yeah, but that was where we took that picture in the corner. So using the network, in this case, I think there's a lot of different ways of doing it. And in this case, the inputs to me and my colleagues has been talking to the other cities, especially Vejle has done some different projects on urban movement data. But also in the very beginning, we had a network meeting in the Nordic Smart City Network, and they gave us a lot of input on what did they know, what was the technologies, and how could we use their knowledge to get it, like, the project formed in a good way. And we had a market dialogue, I think, a year ago, a bit over a year. But there we also really used the network, because we got the network to kind of contact a lot of their local companies to engage in this. So we had, I think, double as much participation from companies than we would have had just by the companies we knew and the channels that we had to spread the word. Yeah, because the sensor just got up. We don't have that much to share yet of what the actual knowledge is. We have a lot to share on the process. And we'll have, like, so we're a smaller group of cities as well that's directly connected to this project. And we will be having a smaller meeting, just going through all of this in a bit more than 7 minutes. And also we'll publish this so that everyone can get a bit of that story. So we've talked a lot already. I've had dialogue and phone calls from other cities in the network. Like, oh, so we're working on wayfinding projects, for example. So what is your opinion on this technology? How did you use this? Or if you look at this company, what's your initial thoughts and stuff like that? Yeah. To get a bit of the, like, biggest challenges. So that's a picture of the actual mounting. I was on a plane to here, so I didn't see it, but they sent it to me. One of the actual, like, biggest challenges was to get the power supply. So we wanted to put up the sensors, but the sensors did not have enough solar power, and the battery needed to have 24-hour. I think they could handle like 3 hours, but that's not enough when you want to measure the entire day. So we wanted to put them up, and that's also one of the other things, that finding the actual place that you can install the sensor, that's also quite an issue, because when you want power, and you want a sensor that has to have a certain reach, it has to have a certain height, and has to be able to monitor what you need to monitor, then there's suddenly not that many places you can mount it. And that also took us, I think, if I count together, 4 months from we started having one solution till we ended up having this solution. Because every time we found a new solution, there was another challenge. And there was another challenge. So it was very difficult. There's a high cost as well of putting up a sensor. We ended up being able to mount it on the town hall itself, which was pretty amazing, because it's a building that you cannot put anything permanent into, because it's a heritage building. But we ended up using straps and like temporary things to actually put it up and secure it up there so that it doesn't fall down. And there's a lot of legal stuff to be sure that you don't hit anyone like a pedestrian down on the street. And legal and also GDPR. GDPR has been mentioned, and the ethics of doing, like this is actually monitoring people. And it's very important to be very much aware of how is it that you do this. We ended up using a thermal sensor, so there's no actual pictures. It's a direct algorithm on the, so it's called a camera, but it's not really a camera. That's also wording when you talk to legal. It's a camera sensor. And the camera takes the thermal picture and directly by AI gets the person into the data point, and the data point is saved, but not the actual frame of the person. So that's a way of securing, and even though that's the final decision, legal still ended up being like, do you know that in 10 years' time, maybe, we don't know whether anyone can see on that certain frame that that certain amount of white around the person is that person. So there's a lot of things, and also to be aware of how is it that technology change. Yeah. And also there's been a lot of partners, been a lot of communication back and forth. There's been a lot of changing suppliers. So we started out after the market dialogue having one supplier, and we thought that was a possibility for quite a while. And then in January, I think, we found out that that was not going to work. Then we found a new one, and that was together with Gil. But then that sub-supplier was changed out as well, because that was an American company, and GDPR with that was a bit tricky. Then we found an English company, which is the one that we ended up with. But that took us quite a while, so there's so many steps in the process on the way that you need to be aware of, and we thought we started early, but we still ended up having the sensor up just a week before. Yeah. So I think that's like, for now, what I can say and share specifically on this project. But in a year's time, we'll have all the analysis done, and we'll have the final report, and we'll do some like in-between reporting as well. We've got the market dialogue in our webpage, the Copenhagen Solution Lab webpage, so you can all go and look at that, and we've divided it up into different technology types, and how we see those different types being applied to different projects, because that's also, like, I think that's really important talking about flow data. You can't just think that there's one big solution that does it all. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Malene, for getting some also some details about how how difficult it can be. So now we're into the concrete things. Anyone ready for a paper flyer on the scene? You might be able to hit me right now. Any questions to Malene or some of the previous presenters? So now I would like to introduce Kristin Jon Olafsson. And you will talk about smart bins. Welcome.
Do we have the newest slides? 10 seconds. Icelanders, we are not often well prepared. We are always trying to do things in the last minute, because actually we don't know what is happening tomorrow when you live in a country like Iceland, where we have earthquakes, and the next Eyjafjallajökull will explode in our face. So we'll see if it happens now, and we will have the slides. But I can start by talking. We in Reykjavik are leading the Smart Bin project. within the Nordic Smart Cities network. So it was the wrong first slide, but it doesn't matter. After we started our research, we have found out that these projects within the Nordic Smart Cities network are quite connected. They are even more connected than we thought in the beginning. So could we maybe just get the last version, because it's not the right version that you have there? Sorry about that. So in Iceland, we are setting up, I can start by telling you about our test beds. We have 3 test beds that we are setting up, which are located in the city center by the concert hall, and also in the science park where the university is. And finally, Klambratún also, where we have started our smart bin pilot. Klambratún is a park located in the city center. In many ways, Reykjavik is an ideal testbed. Exceptional infrastructure that consists of, for example, geothermal energy that heats up our homes, and the swimming pool that the network had been visiting the last time when we were holding our meeting in Reykjavik in April. Swimming pools for Icelanders are like a park for many others, where we meet and chat and discuss about things that are ongoing. Almost every home is connected to fiber optic cables. So we have also short distances between people, and so everybody in a way knows everybody. Finally, the harsh and constantly changing weather is just a good place to see if things actually work. So we have these test beds that I was mentioning. And to the right, you can see Klambratún. It's Kjarvalstaðir, the icon that you see there. So let's dig into it. Why smart bin sensors? How can bins actually be smart? Today we need to check frequently each urban bin. You know, they go and check on each bin if it's filling up. That can be time-consuming and lead to bins overflowing with litter. Smarter bins can, however, let us know with sensor technology if they're filling up, what time it's best to empty them, and what is the optimized route to finish that job. But do we actually need smart sensors in all our urban bins to improve our collection efficiency? So the pilot objectives. Here you can see a picture of Klambratún, which is quite unclear. The pilot objectives are test different sensor tech and design. Then we are talking about, for example, optical and other solutions. Test different network connectivity. LoRaWAN versus Wi-Fi, narrowband IoT, etc. Test interaction between different suppliers, hardware and software. Learn how sensor integration functions with existing bins. You know, vendors can oversell things and they say, we have the solution for you. And I ask, do you know our needs? And they say, no, I haven't talked to you and I don't have a clue what kind of bins you actually have. So it's very important to know the needs before you say that you can solve our issues. Share results during and after the proof of concept with stakeholders. Select optimal solutions to scale up. So these are the objectives. And here you can see a comparative study that is a work in progress. What criteria should be considered in a smart bin project was carried out in collaboration with partners from the Nordic Smart City Network. That work showed the city's representatives and workers have common challenges in the field, and that collaboration is a key component to accelerate implementation of smart city solutions. The products that we started piloting are from NordSense and Sensoneo. There we have different, for example, sensing options. We can see optical and ultrasonic. That is light and versus sound sensors. Then we can also see different connectivity between those different kinds of solutions. We have narrowband IoT and LoRaWAN. So we are setting up this comparative study to understand actually what the offerings are and how they fit into our urban space, and if that is the right solution for us. We will also include information about what other cities are doing and key results from them. For example, in Copenhagen, they have implemented 1,000 sensors, I think. I'm correct with that. On the product list, you can also see that we have solutions from 3 countries in the Nordics, which are Denmark, Iceland, and Finland on this list. But this, as I told, is a work in progress. We are aiming also to have a workshop on smart urban bins at the Smart City Expo in Barcelona in November, where we aim to share our findings so far. You are welcome to join us there and talk about your challenges, findings from your city, and the solutions also you have for that. It's not only sensors that we are looking into, it's also innovative recycling bins, for example. And this one is from Big Belly, which is a Boston-based company, where they have sensors in the recycle bins for each and every one, plastic, paper, and mixed waste in the middle. They also have a compressor for the mixed waste, which is controlled by solar panel on the top. So it's interesting to look into different kind of options for the urban bins and landscape. The results so far for this one has led to that instead of emptying the bin once to twice per day in the city centrum, we are emptying it once a week. That is the mixed waste that has the compressor. So that is quite an amazing result from that one. But what is the downside with urban bin sensors? As I mentioned, the installation and the sensing tech has challenged to work effectively for different kinds of bins that are existing in the urban space, and also the maintenance cost is a question mark. So, are there any other solutions out there? A startup in Iceland who started their project in our city hack last year are now actually looking into machine learning algorithm as a way to create a predictive model for waste status based on, for example, flow of people, weather, and events data. So there is, in a way, kind of a clear connection to, for example, the Copenhagen project regarding flow of people. So maybe we don't need bin sensors after all. Possibly we just need smart work around open data, artificial intelligence, crowdsourcing. How can we, for example, engage citizens to keep the city clean? Possibly we will end up with mixed solutions. By keep on testing these different solutions and sharing our findings between stakeholders, we'll find out what the optimal way is to go forward. So, lastly, I would like to show you a video from last year that we made with the former mayor of Reykjavik City, we emphasize that work needs to be fun. So our passion for finding the best solutions keeps on growing. So we got the mayor with us, the former mayor, to be the voice for the Smart Bin at the biggest IT conference in Iceland last year. And I will hereby end my presentation by showing you how that unfolded.
Kom inn.
Og daginn.
Daginn. Hefur einhverja reynslu sem að þú getur nýtt þér inn í þetta verkefni?
Meinarðu af ruslatunum? Nei.
Þú veist, nú er þetta rödd ruslatunnunar í Reykjavíkurborg.
Ég held að þetta sé skrýtnasta pröfa sem að ég hef farið í.
Ég ætla að gefa það tækifæri til að koma þér aðeins betur í hugarfarið, í rétta hugarfarið bara.
Já, ok. Og býtu, er þetta bara svona tunna?
Er einhverjar æfingar sem þú til þið geta gert svona sem innblástur þarna?
Já, góðan og blessaðan daginn. Jæja, hvað segið þið? Er ekki allir í stuði? Eitthvað svona, eða? Nei, ég skil ekki alveg. Gott rusl.
Ef við prófa að setja smá pungi í þetta.
Já. Á ég að sjá þetta rusl?
Afsakið Jón. Hvað var þetta?
Þetta var bara karakterinn minn að reyna að segja þessa setningu.
Já.
Hvað?
Það er spurning að þú sért bara þú, sko.
Á ég að sjá þetta rusl? Nei.
Nei, einmitt þarna mistu við pungin, sko.
Já. Ég er svona í hálfgerðu rusli út af þessu.
Ef ekki bara að sleppa þessari.
Nei, ég get gert þetta aftur. Ég bara, fáum þetta bara þannig til þú ert sátt. Eða bara, á ég að sjá þetta rusl?
Næsta.
Ok. Talandi ruslatunna. Hvað er nú næst? Já. Takk fyrir að flokka. Á ég að sjá þetta rusl?
Thank you.
Kristin, now we know all about bins and how they can talk, finally. So now it's time for the Q&A. So I would like to invite the project owners, the 4 project owners that have been presenting up here. And meanwhile, we'll get the questions on the screen. So, and like last time, if you can remove the questions that we already have been through. So let's start with the first one. We need new knowledge for the future and for scaling up innovation for better solutions. How to best involve researchers and students in the innovation processes. Anyone? Yeah?
I can take this. Does it work?
No. I can maybe start while you fix that. First and foremost, I think that we should base ourselves within the university and entrepreneurs where they are located. So one of the things that we are looking into actually now in Reykjavik City is to have offices in the Science Park. So to be in contact with them on a daily basis, to have a discussion with them, and also to gather the challenges within the city and have it presented in front of the entrepreneurs, of the researchers, on an everyday basis. How often have we seen that students and ourselves have been doing some projects that somebody else has done, and it's just ended in the just down somewhere. So we need to connect the right people with the challenges that we are facing.
On an everyday basis, more or less.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Kaisa?
Okay.
Is it working?
I hope it's working now. So I had an answer, it's always agile piloting. So in agile piloting, so of course we also include the research sector, the universities. So one good way has been, for example, to include the students, for example, for making user service, while we are defining the area to be piloted, defining the theme. And then, of course, we invite researchers engaged in the thematics for the co-creation workshops within the experimentation phase. And actually, it's proven to be like a very fruitful way, and they are very interested to use the pilots as cases in their studies in general.
So we have also been using a lot of time, especially in the market dialogue phase, talking to different universities and researchers on what is the development at the moment. How does the technology work? And also, so we've had a lot of conversations with them around how has their project been taken by the citizens and the test persons to know what the reaction is from the beginning.
And I think that's very important what you also said. And actually, Kristin also said something about ongoing dialogue, I think, or at least I heard it. Mm-hmm. So I think also having structures like piloting programs or other means provides also basis for this ongoing dialogue also with the research sector.
Any comments?
Yeah, I just want to comment. I'm lucky enough to be from a region where we also have a research group on smart cities. We have 6 to 8 PhDs at the moment working on various topics. And the reason for me mentioning this is that we are trying to get ahead. So when we already chosen sort of the projects, then it's almost a little bit too late. We want the researchers to figure out what will be the next big thing. What should we really focus on? So that's another approach, but we need them along all the way. It's on the practical side, but also on the sort of high-level side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great, thank you. So what is the potential of injecting joyfulness and fun into smart city projects? That's a cute one. Yeah, you're smiling.
Good question. There are a lot of opportunities, like you saw with the video, where we included the former mayor with us. He is actually a comedian also, but still, there are a lot of potentials. I think this is something that we should just work closely with like entrepreneurs and students on. Because by listening to them, we then know what they are looking for. For example, at this IT conference that we were at with this video and the bin, talking bin, etc., afterwards, students and the guests, they got so excited about the concept. So in a way, we had created the brand about Reykjavik Smart City. So afterwards, we got a lot of people that were interested to work for the city, but we didn't actually have jobs for them. So in a way, we did it in a playful way, and just in a way that how they are interacting on a daily basis. So we have to set ourselves into their steps and listen to them. And based on that, we can create a lot of ways to do it in a joyful and fun way.
And you created ambassadors as well, that you on a daily basis.
Yes, exactly.
I think we also talked a bit about it earlier in the previous section, how to engage citizens. And engaging in a joyful and fun way is just one of them. A lot of the challenges we have as cities today requires people to change their behaviors. And we want to have them doing it with us as the city. Talking on flow data and that specific case, what we're talking a lot about is it would be great if we could have people to join in themselves to give the data to the municipality, and we could have a completely different data set than we have today. But maybe we have to tackle that, and what we're talking about is what do they want in return? Is that something that's joyful, or is it something that's really good knowledge for them on air quality or how long they've run or whatever. Yeah.
Also from Forum Virium Helsinki's perspective, so we are an intermediary organization, so for us network is everything, and creating kind of the momentum for collaboration and bringing people together is crucial. And like piloting and other ways are actually, as they bring people around the same table, so although we don't try to be especially joyful, but creative, yes, and co-creative, so we've received very good feedback. So, I mean, people, when different parties are brought together and working together, so they feel empowered, they are energized, and they enjoy it. So I think that's the strength, and that's something you should seek to.
Yeah, I think especially the inclusion process with the co-creation, that's where sort of the joy comes in. But we are not either very joyful when we work, but we try to inspire and we try to be open to new ideas. Yeah.
I would like maybe to add one more thing also. We are having this city hackathon early now in October. And in the registration format, we actually asked 3 questions. Name, email, and what would you like to have included regarding equipment, software, etc. in the hackathon. So asking those questions, then we get the feedback from them, and then we know how to make things more joyful with 3D printers, drones, or whatever, so they get excited.
Yeah. Gunnar was saying also about the inclusion, and actually for the past year, so Smart Kalasatama has had a physical lab where we actually invited the Nordic partners a month ago, and it's like within a commercial center in the area, and it's really like next door to the residential area. So that's also a way to kind of meet them, greet them, and like Christian said, also find different ways to kind of find out what they would like to. But I mean, I think it's also like being there, seeing also the residents and bringing them in.
Okay, great. So the next question, maybe that's especially for you. How do citizens react to sensors in the city?
I would like to have a go. We had this project that actually came as a big surprise to us, the reactions. Some of you may know it. It was our bathing temperature sensors, a project I didn't want to prioritize, but the vendor, the partner said, we'll do it anyway, more or less. And they did, and actually this project made our citizens aware of what sensoring can mean for them. So maybe not the highest value for us. We saved some money, some work hours of measuring manually. But the biggest point was it opened the minds of our citizens. So they actually understood, oh, sensors can be used for this and that purpose. And last year it was actually our second most visited web page during the summer, because people went in and they took refresh all the time to check when they could go for a swim. So it actually works.
I think it depends a lot, or it's very much up to the communication in the urban space where the sensor is actually placed. Because if there's just a box or a thingy hanging in the street, and no one knows whether it's surveying you or taking pictures or measuring the air quality, then people tend to get a bit scared or not unsecure maybe of what is it that's happening. But as soon as they know, oh, that's just actually monitoring the air quality in the area, because if that's really good for the city to know, to get it better, then people are quite okay with them.
It would also be very great if we could include the citizens so they could actually do the sensing for us.
Yeah.
So crowd sensing, getting them to bring in the data that we need. I think this will be the future anyway, so let's try to do it together. Our cell phones, mobile phones will have this built in anyway soon.
And in Helsinki, actually from last spring, so we have had several projects related to air quality, and we've been really crowdsourcing citizens to collect sensor data. So they have been kind of taking sensors in their homes or carrying sensors with them. So kind of they are, if the citizens are interested in that, so they are kind of ready to share data and their data as well. But have to find the right ways and, of course, have respect for privacy issues.
So let's go on to the next question. That will be maybe a bit more difficult to answer. It's very broad. Will these solutions be open source software or closed? So these solutions could be, is it, I don't know if it's for one of special of the projects.
I don't think all the solutions in themselves will be open source. There, we have to have some respect for the private companies delivering us solutions, especially if it's more like a closed-down solution, one fixed solution. But the ideas of the projects and the sharing, like the sharing from Copenhagen, this gives us a lot of insights, and we actually skip the part where we do a lot of things wrong because we have already learned what's the challenges, how can we sort of skip that, and that makes us better to procure, which then again makes us able to sort between the different vendors, the different companies delivering the solutions. So I think from our side, at least from Stavanger's side, we're going to share as much as possible, but we still want to respect the business secrets of our partners.
Of course. Yeah.
Yes.
Any more comments to that one? Or should we go on to the next question?
Next one.
Okay. Can your solutions be used in other parts of the world?
Oh, yes.
And now we're into sustainability, because I truly believe...
And export.
And export.
Yeah.
For these solutions to be sustainable, to be there next year, they have to be scaled up and exported. It could be across the Nordics, but hopefully across the world, right? And this is how it should and have to be, I think.
Yes, for sure. I think actually the Nordics can be a great testbed for many solutions out there. And regarding the conditions that we have, for example, as I mentioned earlier, harsh weather conditions. So I think we can, in a way, lead by example and scale also startups between the Nordics. And so I think there's a great potential, of course, with the solutions that we are working on in the Nordics, that we can actually implement them and scale them up to other countries for sure, because we have the conditions to test them in different kind of scenarios.
Yeah, and kind of comment, the bad weather that some of us have, let's use it as an advantage. I actually have projects with equipment from France and even Denmark that really don't work with the climate in Stavanger. That's quite interesting. If you can make it work in Stavanger, then probably it will work even in Iceland.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you don't have the snow like in Helsinki. Yeah, but anyway, so I think like with Nordic collaboration, so we can really kind of label that it's been tested in the Nordics, and that's like much stronger for a company than just kind of referencing to one city.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So, what are the challenges for city-driven data collection live up to scientific standards related to academic research?
If I can start. Time. Research and researchers, they want everything to be, they should have everything to be verified and tested and over again. And cities, they really want things to happen. And I think that's at least in Copenhagen one of the things that we've been trying to overcome together with the researchers. Because of course we're not jumping over the scientific facts, but just the fact that we want to be able to apply stuff much earlier in the phase than researchers might want to.
I also see internal challenge, if I may, I just want to share. We see that the various specialists in their different domains, they very much want everything to be 100% correct. And sometimes it needs to be, especially if you need to make big decisions. But what if a citizen only just wants to know, is it okay for me to take my bike to work today? Is the air pollution below a certain degree? Should I take a different means of transportation? Maybe that measurement doesn't need to be 100% correct. Maybe 90 is good enough, or even 70, because it actually gives you real-time feedback. So we have to have these kind of discussions. What are you going to use the facts for? What's the consequence? And when is it actually good enough to be below the 99.9%. We'll see a lot of that coming on, even with the crowd sensing, as I mentioned. People won't really bother with what we are saying is the 100% correct answer, because they have their own measurements, and then we have to cope with that.
Yeah. So let that be, unless you have something final comment, let that be the last bit of this Q&A session. Unfortunately, we didn't make it through all the questions, but it's soon lunchtime, and there you can continue discussing with the presenters on the scene. So now it's time to introduce Teppo, who would like to, on behalf of the Nordic Network, wrap up the day. Thank you to all of you.
Now it's time for me to sort of wrap it up, and it's been really, really good to see, because this is what happens in practice. Now you see very examples of very pragmatic things that the cities can do together, and also the way that cities can engage the rest of the ecosystem working these things together. And as Kim mentioned in the beginning, we had like 14 cities to start with. Now we have more than 20 cities in the network working together and starting a new round of very interesting solutions. Actually, one of the things is that in the session after this, so starts 2 p.m. after the lunch, we actually invite all you to come back and start working with us. What are the next challenges that we will be continuing to work with? And we have a lot of good ideas, and we'd like to get some more feedback from you. And I think it's very important to see that this is a real, true sort of a triple helix type of a thing, where the corporates, the companies, are a very important part of what we are doing. So it's sometimes not always that visible, but in real life terms, we couldn't make it if it would be just the initiatives from the public sector or the city side. So we can provide a lot of things. We can provide the platform, we can provide the challenges, and we can provide ideas, but we do need then the companies to come and join us. And actually, there's a lot to gain the companies. We alone in Tampere, we have been working with more than 300 companies in the last 2 years, and there's been a lot of more than 70 projects coming out of those works. And now when we actually can combine forces with the other Nordic countries, we have so much more power, so much more of the essence of what is similar in our cities. So the Nordic cities have really, really similar challenges, similar infrastructure, similar culture, similar mindset. That's why we can do things in a way that probably nobody else in the world can do as good together as we can. So let's use that, and let's really, really work on bringing the best of our Nordic cities together. And by the way, the companies we have, they also have companies which are non-Nordic companies. So other than Nordic companies are also welcome to work with us, because we need to get the best from all over the world to make ourselves distinct. When we started the Nordic Smart City Network, we always thought that there's something to it. There's a brand called Nordic Smart City, which is different, and it's actually better in many ways than the rest of the world. So let's promote that. Let's keep it up there, because you can be proud of what we have here. So with all this, I'm sure that you have got a good picture of what we have been doing, and we also improve in what we do. So there'll be much more, bigger things coming up than what you just saw. But I think it's also good to understand that we go into very pragmatic things, very practical things that we do. We want to be not on the high level looking at things, but also in the ground level doing things. And that is one of our DNAs in this network. So on behalf of the Nordic Smart City Network, it's been a pleasure having you with us this morning. The questions, by the way, were really good. So we need to come back to some of those questions, and maybe you can come back to that in the afternoon session as well, to talk a little bit about, what it means, how do we work. I think there was good questions about the private sector versus cities that we didn't get into, and that is a good one, because we need that sort of a dialogue and discussion. So with this, I want to kind of conclude this session. I want to invite you back after lunch at 2 p.m. and start working with us on these things. And we get really productive in, making the Nordic smart cities a great example in the world of how the smart cities can be. Thank you so much.